Hello, dear participants and speakers. A warm welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for tuning into this online EU site event at COP27. I'm delighted to moderate this event with our distinguished speakers. Since last year, when we organized a similar event at COP26, much has changed. Global economic forecasts may have weakened, yet our global commitment to building a sustainable economy has not. Climate change is the biggest challenge of our times. In Europe, the summer 2022 will be remembered as a turning point. We all saw dry rivers and burning forests due to extreme heat. And a very recent Eurobarometer survey finds that most Europeans, namely 88% of Europeans, agree that the green transition should not leave anyone behind, and they feel a personal responsibility to act upon it. We all know difficult challenges that Europe is facing and also the whole world these days. Energy prices have risen dramatically, and all this comes on top of the climate crisis. In Europe, the European Green Deal has been our plan to address the climate crisis. It sets a target of climate neutrality by 2050. And the Commission proposed it already in 2019. Later, it accompanied by the financing plan. And last year, also with the so-called Fit for 55 program. You'll hear more about this later on. And most importantly, earlier this year, following Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the Commission adopted REPowerEU as the Union's plan to make Europe independent from Russian fuels well before 2030. Actually, both the COVID-19 pandemic and the most recent steep increase in energy prices have reinforced the need to redirect money towards sustainable projects in order to make our economies, businesses, and societies more resilient against such crises, and in particular, climate and environmental shocks. So the message for today could not be clearer. We must speed up sustainable investments. And this is why today's session that we are organizing at this COP27 is focused on one of the European Commission flagship programs. It's focused on the program InvestEU. This program supports companies, public authorities, equity funds, and even private households for their sustainability projects. We will hear four esteemed speakers: Director from the European Commission, we'll hear representative from the European Investment Fund, we'll hear a representative from a bank, and an equity fund manager. So all experienced in their respective fields. And at the end, we will answer to your questions, dear audience. So please, any queries, any questions you might have, or any comments to the presentations you will hear as of now, do share your thoughts, questions via Slido. You will see it on the screen. We will make sure that towards the end of this online session, we will answer to your questions and comment your potential remarks or queries you might have. Thank you very much in advance for doing so. And now, without a further ado, I would like to invite first the European Commission speaker, Merete Clausen, Director of the Investment Directorate at the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, to deliver the first presentation today on the policy stance on all the reasons that we embedded behind the European program InvestEU. Over to you, Merete. Thank you.
Thank you, Ula. And thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm very glad to be able to give the introduction and also to be joined by so knowledgeable expert speakers here today. And I want to thank all of you who are watching this COP27 side event of the European Commission. As Ula said, I'm Director of Investment in the department of the Commission that supports the internal market, the industry, and the development of all businesses, no matter their size, who contribute to our society and to building a better future for us all. Our purpose with this event is to tell you more about how we are using a main EU spending program, the InvestEU, to further our climate goals and contribute to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy. The InvestEU program supports other goals as well, but sustainability and the climate agenda run through it like a red thread. I'll give a background and context for that before moving to the program itself. As was mentioned, the EU and all its member states has signed the Paris Agreement in 2015. We adhere to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and this means that our policies and our programs must be designed to contribute to delivering on our Paris commitments. This is also the case for the EU strategy for removing obstacles for the free flow of capital in the internal market, the so-called Capital Market Union. And so it came about that as part of the Capital Market Union Action Plan, the Commission set up a high-level expert group to develop a comprehensive European strategy on green finance in 2016. The group delivered its report in 2018, and one of the conclusions of the experts was that finance must contribute to a higher extent to sustainable and inclusive growth, and that ESG criteria must be incorporated into investment decision-making. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, what are the goals that we want to achieve with our investments? Now, as the impact of climate change on people and on economies became more and more apparent, so did the need for a comprehensive and ambitious strategy on carbon neutrality. This was addressed in the Commission's Green Deal of 2019. The very ambitious Green Deal goals are to make the EU the first CO2 emission neutral continent by 2050 and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to the 1990 levels. This requires a major overhaul of the EU economy, and it requires very significant investments. The figure you see on the slide comes from our new sustainable finance strategy that was adopted in 2021. It estimated a need for additional 350 billion euros per year for just to achieve the 2030 target of minus 55% greenhouse gas emissions, and 130 billion extra per year for other environmental goals. So a very, very significant amount. Can I have the next slide? But there are, of course, many competing priorities. Since the Green Deal was presented by the Commission in December 2019, we have lived through a COVID pandemic where focus was on supporting the businesses that were being closed down. We have lived through an energy crisis where focus was on supporting households suffering from increased prices. And we have lived through a war where focus is on supporting Ukraine and rebuilding the supply lines that have been cut off. But we must not lose focus on, or you lose the sense of the urgency to act on climate. On the contrary, the different crises demonstrate how important it is to continue investing in renewable energy, in batteries for electric vehicles, in use of green hydrogen, and in general to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technology. The Commission's Repower EU strategy of this year is a strong example of that. Its main purpose is to reduce dependency of Russian gas by calling for energy savings, for diversification of energy sources, and for building more energy infrastructure in Europe to relieve the dependency. And thereby, it also accelerates the call for investments into the climate agenda. Can I have the next slide? Now, let's take a short look at the different pillars of the sustainable finance framework that we are setting up. First of all, there's the taxonomy. This is the platform where experts define what is really green. They're working on a harmonized definition of what can be considered to be sustainable investments. This is to avoid greenwashing. And in addition, we also want to set up disclosure requirements that give companies the obligation to report on their greenness. Again, in order for everyone to be more informed and to avoid the risk of greenwashing. And finally, the EU has set up tools for sustainable finance. We are working on standards for green bonds. You may know that to help the European economies come out of the crisis following the COVID pandemic, in the Recovery and Resilience Facility, member states agreed that to finance their COVID recovery plans, they can borrow jointly on the markets. And 30% of that borrowing must come from green bonds. This gives an unprecedented boost to the green bond markets. And the first bond issuance the commissions have made have been a great success and hugely oversubscribed. So we are really shaping the markets in the area of green bonds. But now let's move with the next slide to the tool that is the focus of our presentation today, InvestEU. Also here we have a 30% objective. At least 30% of the investments that we support must contribute to climate objectives. This is also a historical slide because it shows that in the previous period from 2014 to 2020, we had scattered programs for investment of the EU budget and also for supporting green objectives. These were replaced in the current period from 21 to 27 by just 4 main windows under the InvestEU, where we are supporting sustainable infrastructure, we're supporting research and innovation investments, we're supporting SMEs, and we're supporting social impact investment and skills. But the slide also shows the different pillars of the program, the InvestEU programs. It shows that doling out EU finance alone is not enough. It needs to be accompanied by other support to projects, technical assistance to make them financeable. That's what we're doing under the InvestEU Advisory Hub, and also matchmaking with interested investors. And that is what is being done under the InvestEU Investment Portal. Now, this slide that you now have on your screen shows how it works. Guarantees of up to 26.2 billion are given to banks and other financial institutions. And this allows them to give loans and guarantees and even equity finance to projects. And this risk-taking, in turn, allows private investors to have confidence in the projects and to come in with their investments. And altogether, we hope that this will result in investments of up to 372 billion over 7 years. It's not enough to fill the gap, because as we saw before, just for climate-related investments, the yearly gap is even more than this amount. But still a significant contribution when you take into account that the EU budget is only about 1% of the total GDP of member states. On the next slide, you will see who our partners are, because we are not doing this alone. We are working together with financial institutions all over Europe to achieve our goals with InvestEU. The main partner is the EIB group, the EIB being the EU's climate bank, and the European Investment Fund, who are the risk capital arm of the EIB group, supporting in particular SMEs with risk capital. And we also work with other multilateral institutions, such as the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Nordic Investment Bank, the Council of Europe Bank. And we work with national promotional banks in the member states, because those are the ones who have the feet on the ground, who knows what the needs are for companies in their geographical territories. Later, you will hear from a representative of the EIF, who will present in more detail the InvestEU products that are on offer, supported by the EU guarantee to target green investments. Now, this is what to look for, basically, when you have green products. When you have green projects, these products that you see now on the screen, there's products providing debt, there are products providing equity, there are products for small and for bigger projects. The EIF will tell you much more about that later today. And the final slide shows you where to find out more. The European Enterprise Networks offer services to support SMEs who want to grow beyond their own country's borders. That's the first web page you see, the first link you see on the slide. Then we have the Commission's Access to Finance website. This is where you can find EU-backed financial opportunities for your company in your country. It's supposed to be a one-stop shop, so hopefully all that you will need can be found there. And finally, the webpage of the InvestEU program itself. So check it out. There's help to be had. And I wish you good luck with all your green products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Merete, for this presentation and all the links provided. So let's hope that, dear participants, you can really have a further look and queries on the 3 websites provided in the last slide. Our next speaker is Paula Ruiz Martin from the European Investment Fund. Paula is very experienced in sustainable finance. As you have just heard from Merete's presentation, the European Investment Fund is the Commission's entrusted entity to implement the largest portion of the InvestEU program. And today, Paula will present you in detail those debt and also equity products under the InvestEU program, which target specifically the green investments. The virtual floor is yours, Paula. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ula. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're attending this presentation from. First of all, I would like to thank you all for being here with us, listening to what the EIF is doing to support the transition towards a low carbon and a resilient economy, particularly under InvestEU and with the European Commission support. As we all know, the funding gap for climate and environmental related investments and solutions is huge. Merete has mentioned before that almost 500 billion are needed per year to comply with the objectives of the EU Green Deal. These figures and bigger ones are being, as well as the billion and trillion word, are being pronounced these days in COP27 quite often. And it's true that it can be overwhelming even when we work in a financial institution or in the financial sector. And it can be difficult to picture what it does actually mean, but luckily the challenge that we're facing has these dimensions. So today I will pronounce a couple of times the word billion, but I will focus mainly on talking about the tangible solutions that the EIF is already offering to the market to bridge this funding gap, particularly by supporting SMEs in the green transition and in the European Union. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. As an introductory remark, and for the ones that are not familiarized with EIF's activity, we operate in an intermediate model. So we are focused on implementing the mandates that different institutions entrust us, mainly the EIB, the European Commission, and local authorities and national promotional institutions. We designed together with our mandators financial products, specifically equity and debt risk-sharing instruments that target funding gaps with respect to EU policy priorities. And how do we implement them? We enter into contracts with financial intermediaries that in turn on lend or invest into final beneficiaries. And as of today, we have worked with more than 600 funds and 400 banks. So thanks to this process, we finance mainly SMEs, but also small mid-caps, housing associations and individuals. And we transform on average each euro of public resources into 5 euros actually invested in final recipients, thanks to the mobilization of private capital. In the case of InvestEU, this leverage is even higher. So for every euro of InvestEU resources, we expect 13 euros to be invested in the real economy. Please, let's go to the next slide. So the EIF has been a pioneer and an early investor in the European clean tech space since 2006 and is considered amongst the largest and most active fund-of-fund clean tech investors in Europe. Today, the EIF has channeled over 1 billion to climate and environmental venture capital and private equity funds. But until recently, we did not have an institutional objective to pursue investments in this field. Neither we had a mandate that specifically targeted climate action. Thanks to the EIPG Climate Bank Roadmap, we have ambitious targets as a group. So first, to invest at least, and there I go again with one of the worst, 1 trillion of investments into climate action and environmental sustainability in this critical decade. Second, to increase the annual share of financing in these fields. In the case of the EIB is 50%. In the case of the EIF is a bit lower because we're still committed to support all the relevant policy areas such as social, inclusion, skills, culture and creativity, among others. But we are striving to commit by 2024 25% of our financing volumes to green objectives, which is still a very ambitious target, given the nascent market of our targeted beneficiaries in this respect, which are, again, mainly SMEs. This gives us the means to contribute to the EU Green Deal objectives and will allow us to mobilize approximately 42 billion euros for greening the European economy and supporting the energy independence of our continent. And this is mainly thanks to InvestEU, which is the biggest contributor to EIF climate investments. And finally, our third objective, which was to align our financing activities with the principles of the Paris Agreement. And I speak in past tense because it's been already implementing. Actually, the EIB and the EIF were the first MDPs to become Paris aligned since the start of 2021. And at COP26, we launched our Paris Alignment for Counterparties framework, which goes beyond that. So we are not only considering the climate impact of the projects we finance, but also the wider profile or the wider activity of borrowers and fund managers. Next slide. And now, as promised, let's go to the point. In April of this year, we launched the InvestEU product toolbox, the first implementing partner to do so. Since then, we have received a lot of interest from the market. In many cases, the products were the successor of the previous products under the past programming period from the European Commission, but not in this case. We have 3 brand new products that are key to contribute to InvestEU climate target. So I'm glad to present you the InvestEU Sustainability Guarantee product, the InvestEU Climate and Environmental Solutions Equity product, and the InvestEU Climate and Infrastructure Funds. What we're aiming to do in the first case is to support sustainable enterprises as well as green investments, which contribute to the green and sustainable transformation of Europe. In the second case, in the case of the equity product, to boost support for research and development, upscaling and commercialization of solutions that contribute to the EU Green Deal. And given that as of 2021, the EIF took over from the EIB the implementation of the infrastructure funds investment, we are supporting the backbone infrastructure and industrial ecosystem in green economy, transport, environment, etc. If we can jump into the next slide, please. So let's start with the InvestEU Sustainability Guarantee. So this is the first pan-European guarantee product designed to support the green transition of SMEs, small mid-caps, housing associations, and individuals. Thanks to this guarantee, we're enhancing access to debt finance for these final beneficiaries. What we are technically doing is to mitigate the risk of financial intermediaries when on lending to final beneficiaries that comply with certain eligibility criteria and under certain conditions. And in case of default, so in case they fail to pay back the loan, we cover part of the losses. This part depends on the guarantee type. So if it's a capped guarantee, we cover up to 25% of the loans in the portfolio, if uncapped, the whole portfolio, and in both cases, up to 70 or 80% of the amount of the specific loan in default, depending on the type of final beneficiaries. For the ones interested in the technical characteristics, I don't have time to cover all of them, but we have much more information in our website. As you can see in the slide, there are 2 main types of eligibility criteria. Back to the previous slide, please. Okay, still there, thanks. We have 2 types of sustainable, eligibility criteria. We have the sustainable enterprises and the green investment. So sustainable enterprises, according to our products, are SMEs or small mid-caps that have certain traits linked to their sustainability performance or practices, such as prices, patents, intellectual property rights, eco-labels, etc. The other eligibility criteria is green investments undertaken by households or individuals, as well as SMEs and small mid-caps, around the 6 taxonomy pillars. So climate mitigation, adaptation, use of sustainable water, circular economy, pollution prevention and control, and biodiversity and ecosystems. The eligibility criteria under this category are designed in the spirit of the taxonomy and are adapted to the targeted segments, taking a proportional approach. As of today, the criteria that have raised more interest are the ones related with climate mitigation, particularly renewable energy, green buildings, energy efficiency, and mobility. These eligibility criteria are listed in the Sustainability Guarantee use case document, together with additional details, such as the type of certification that the company needs to have for being considered a sustainable enterprise, or the energy performance certification level in case of green buildings, or more specifically, how banks need to assess if the company or the investment is eligible. This use case document will be updated from time to time as needed in order to reflect the changes of the taxonomy and the markets in general. Additionally, given the novelty of the product, we are providing advisory support in several forms. We're implementing market development activities in order to raise awareness around the thematics of the products that we are covering. For example, we organized a webinar on the 11th of October around the sustainability guarantee product, and the recording will be soon available in our website, again, for the ones potentially interested in implementing our product. But the most important advisory element, which is currently in the slide, is the eligibility check web tool that contains the information of this use case document I've just described, but in a more friendly manner. And I'm briefly explaining this in this specific slide. So this is not the premiere of the tool, but it is very fresh news as this was launched only 2 weeks ago. It is an advisory web tool whose aim is to assist the EIF's financial intermediaries in order to understand the eligibility criteria, assessing it, and reporting. It's part of the Green Gateway initiative aimed at supporting financial institutions in general with green and sustainability finance by providing them with advisory and technical assistance. It has been developed by the EIB Advisory Services together with the EIF, with the funding support of the European Investment Advisory Hub and obviously the European Commission. Its main objective is to help with the assessment of eligibility criteria, so designed specifically for financial intermediaries use, but it is accessible to everyone that wants to understand which investments are eligible under our product. It has different functionalities for different criteria. For some, it's just a simple transposition of the use case. For more complex ones, there are additional functionalities. For these cases, it requires that the FIs input certain elements, certain inputs. For example, if they're compliant with the directive of the energy performance of buildings or the U values, if known, for energy efficiency measures, in order to assess if the investment is eligible. For some cases, it also estimates the impact of a measure. For example, the primary energy savings of insulating 100 square meter wall. And you can find the tool in the following link, sustainabilityguarantee.eif.org. Additionally, further advisory and capacity building support will be made available next year in the form of training and help desk. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, second product of the toolbox is the InvestEU equity product targeting climate and environmental solutions and technologies. We aim at increasing the availability of capital to innovative and high growth companies active in these segments. We see them as the champions of the future that will be key to tackle the climate crisis, and this will disrupt the way in which we do business or the way we consume. But we also aim at building up an ecosystem to support the investors and the companies through all stages of development across all geographies. So given the nascent nature of the green tech market and the limited investor landscape, we are seeking to actively support new and emerging teams, being the IF in most cases an anchor investor and a value added partner by providing not only funding, but also structuring input and advisory support. So in simpler words, we are investing in venture capital and private equity funds that in turn invest in companies active in the areas you can see in the screen. Of course, their success, we accompany them through all the stages, and their success is linked to the success of the underlying companies. You can see in the screen the target areas that we are aiming to support with this product. Climate and environment is not a sector or an industry in itself. It's rather an aggregation of verticals which are cross-cutting themes. So this is the reason why the targeted areas are deliberately broad and range from energy to mobility to food and agriculture, industrial decarbonization, as well as blue economy or adaptation solutions. Additionally, we are systematically implementing an impact measurement methodology that links the carried interest of the fund with the achievement of certain smart impact indicators enshrined in the mission of the underlying companies. And this enables us to ensure that there is alignment of interest between the parties involved and understand and measure the positive impact of our intervention. to consider if a company or an investment is actually contributing to climate action and environmental sustainability target, we don't only consider whether they are within a specific sector or segment, imagine green mobility, but if the type of mobility solution is contributing substantially to climate mitigation, in this case, such as, for example, a mobility platform that leases only electric cars, or if the fund is financing a green data-driven solution that it demonstrates life cycle GHG emission savings compared to other alternative technologies. The criteria are listed in EIF's climate and environmental criteria and can be found in our website. On the advisory front for the equity product, we are also aiming at developing a tool to help fund managers navigate these criteria. And additionally, capacity building packages will be designed and offered from next year, so we can generally and overall support fund managers in the implementation of the product. Next slide, please. So finally, climate and infrastructure funds are the last important element of EIF's investment universe in climate action. We're investing in funds that foster infrastructure asset creation, repurposing, or renovation. This includes more traditional renewable energy generation technologies such as wind and solar, where massive investment is needed in order to comply with the national energy and climate plans of EU member states, but also the national determined contributions of the EU. We are also providing financing to more nascent sectors such as e-mobility, electricity storage, green hydrogen production infrastructure, where actual or deemed risk are yet somewhat higher, and where our contribution will help to scale these technologies. Beyond financing infrastructure in the area of green energy transition that you see highlighted in pink in the slide, we're also investing in other sectors that are important for the European economy, such as digital or social. And even for this type of investments, we are looking at the climate agenda. And for example, we look at best-in-class energy efficiency standards when we're investing, for example, in schools or hospitals or data centers. Additionally, we are ensuring that funds have a thorough environmental and social management system in place, and that on average we reach a 70% focus on climate and environmental related investments. And finally, for the ones within the green vertical, we look for their alignment to the EU taxonomy that are classified under the SFDR Article 9, so that they're seek of positive sustainability impact is embedded in their strategy and core documentation that that they report on these impacts to us. And finally, let's go to the next to the last slide. So I wanted to summarize my intervention with 3 key messages. First, there are 3 InvestEU products that will allow the EIF to support the European economy towards a low carbon scenario. Please visit our website or contact us in case you're a financial intermediary and are interested in applying to any of them. In the link in the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the link for the call of expression of interest. Second, if you're a company, even though we cannot finance you directly, you can look for information of which financial intermediaries are applying this product and be in contact with them. Merete was mentioning the links before in our website. You can find them available as well. And third, even when sometimes we feel restless or concerned or whatever emotion we might experience regarding climate change and its effect in our future generations, I also feel like this sometimes. I think it's also nice to see some encouraging and inspiring initiatives that are out there. The EIF has gathered some interesting case studies about disrupting and innovative companies that are contributing to the change. I invite you to look at the brochure you can see on the screen, Players of Change. So it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula, for having explained us in details the European investment funds and, of course, the EIB Group's efforts to reach the Paris targets, and for working as the EU's Green Bank. You are very clear in explaining on how you're working on the InvestEU climate and environmentally sustainable targets. So I really welcome all the participants to follow the links and the use case documents, and also to use the tool recently launched by the EIF, supported by the Commission, because it's meant for you. It's for the market, it's accessible to everyone, and as explained by Paula, it has been recently launched, so it's really new. Do use it. And let's continue. We are very much on time. Given that today's session is focusing also on practicalities of sustainable investing, I'm therefore very delighted to be joined by two speakers who are themselves experienced practitioners in the field, both debt and equity. Let's start first with the bank, and ladies first, of course. So please welcome Elena Flor, Head of ESG and Sustainability Department of Intesa Sanpaolo Bank. The Intesa Sanpaolo Bank is one of the top banking groups in Europe with a significant ESG commitment, a world-class position in social impact, and strong focus on climate. Elena will tell you about the bank's experience with already established sustainability financing, and she will tell us what interests us the most, what motivated the Intesa Sanpaolo Bank to apply for the InvestEU support. Over to you, Elena. Thank you.
So thank you very much for inviting me to this presentation, and really just to share our efforts and our commitment, also the actions we have put in place, and the collaboration with you. Well, going to the first slide, this is just to show you that the strategy of Intesa Sanpaolo is very much in line with, we have heard about the European Union Green Deal, the action plan on for sustainable growth. So really, we recognize as a bank the important role that financial institutions can play, in particular to reorient financial flows towards a more sustainable economy, a low carbon economy. And this is really this slide, which is taken by the business plan, shows you that within the business plan 2022-2025 that we launched earlier this year in February, one of the 4 pillars is dedicated to ESG. And apart from, let's say, an historical, very strong focus on social initiatives, financial inclusion, and so forth, in particular, 2 actions are particularly important in this case: an acceleration and the commitment to net zero, and secondly, the role that we want to play in supporting and accompanying our customers in their ESG transitions. Going to the next slide, you can see, and these again is taken from business plan, that in terms of acceleration, our commitment to net zero, we join all the net zero alliances covering all the businesses that we have as a group. So both on the banking side, but also on the asset management, private banking, and also on the insurance side. So we join all the net zero alliances. We set targets on the lending, together with the business plan, on 4 high priority sectors. And we recently also communicated our targets in terms of the wealth management company. So a clear focus on these. And on the next slide, you see the other focus, which is apart from the commitment to net zero, and really in supporting our clients through the ESG and climate transition. So you see on the slide, we do have some specific targets in terms of lending that we want to provide both to corporates but also to individuals in terms of green mortgages, for example. But it's not only, let's say, It's not only funding and financing activity, but it's a whole range of actions and advisory services. We have some partnerships to accompany the SMEs in particular along the path to the transition. We are opening ESG labs on the territory to have a physical spaces to meet with corporate customers in order to discuss with them this transition, but also a platform, a training platform, because of course it is very important to also to develop these ESG and climate culture within the companies. And on the next slide, you see that quarterly, these numbers are first half results numbers, but last Friday, actually, we publish our September results. So we update them quarterly. We have seen the targets before. We give an update quarterly on what we have been doing, and you see that we have some specific focus. We have had a very strong focus on circular economy, for example, due to the partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And we also have specific products for SMEs. So we are not only looking at big corporates that may feel the pressure to embark in this transition, also coming from the market, from investors, but we have also been focusing specifically on SMEs with specific products, such as, for example, the S-loans that you see here, where we have a full range of products really to encourage and to foster the transition of SMEs. On the next slide, we go directly to the agreement that we have with the European Investment Fund on the InvestEU guarantee products. This is building on the successful operation with the Innovin SME guarantee that we subscribed a few years ago, that is ending at the end of this year. We signed the agreement for two portfolio guarantee products. One is focused on the innovation digitalization, and the other is on sustainability. So the two main drivers also of growth. Of course, on sustainability guarantee, we find here in the list that you see of the support is really in line and coherent with the taxonomy, where again we started disclosing our our eligibility percentage of our total cover assets in the consolidated non-financial statement last year. We will again report on that, and then we will go on the alignment. So of course it is very important for us, the information that is coming from our counterparts, and also the steering of our portfolio in order to be more and more aligned with the taxonomy. And the last slide is really on the value of these agreement for Intesa Sanpaolo and for our clients. Of course, lower capital provision due to the coverage of the risk that is provided. Support of the credit strategy of the bank due to the alignment with the eligibility criteria inspired by the EU taxonomy, as I was just saying before, and enhanced capability also to deal with any innovative businesses. And of course, on the side of SMEs, we applying a reduction of the customer risk spread, providing a reduction of collateral requirements, with the general objective of increasing financing volumes and supporting startups. So really this is something that really fits very well with our strategy. It was already something that we have been working on, let's say, within Intesa Sanpaolo. And of course, these agreements is supporting this strategy and giving also more space to go in this direction, and in particular in supporting SMEs and small mid caps. I would close here my short remarks on these and leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. You are really clear, and we are glad that a bank representative was with us at this online event. And now let's move from a bank to a fund manager. A warm welcome to you, Job Shelvan, founder and managing partner of Pure Terra Water Technology Growth Fund. Created in 2017, Pure Terra Ventures focuses on disruptive water technologies and is deeply involved in the global water sector, recognizing the urgency of global water crisis, as well as the vast opportunities it brings for innovative technologies. Job will talk about Pure Terra's investment strategy and how innovative companies could be supported thanks to the InvestEU. And we are really happy that the signature will happen with you and your fund. The virtual floor is yours, Job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us here. I think what I've heard so far about the program of the InvestEU and the initiatives and tool sets of the European Investment Fund, I really recognize it from our practice with the European Investment Fund, and they've played a significant role in bringing this forward. Let me highlight to you a few notes on that. Maybe firstly, I think we've all heard the Mr. Guterres in no uncertain terms warn us really the path we're on. And in our experience, this is really true for water. Water is a circular system, but water is broken. Or more precisely, we have broken water, and repair is long overdue. And I think I've heard Mrs. von der Leyen and Mr. Timmermans emphasizing on two aspects really to fight climate change. And that is mobilizing the private markets through public funding and empowering people. And that's precisely the two elements that we recognize are essential in water. And I come to that in a moment. But maybe one step back, and that is water for many people is still a UNICEF commercial, but that is long past. Water itself is a global emerging issue, hitting us in developed countries as well. And I think after last summer, many people in Europe are aware of how water and climate change are related. Water has two elements, and I'm going to go to the next slide, please. Water has two elements. Water distress is caused by supply and demand. And the issue with supply is that water is a finite source. It's a fixed source. And 200 years of industrial revolution has brought us a lot in terms of wealth, but it left its traces in the water cycle. Chemicals, plastics, pharmaceuticals is left behind in a already limited water supply. Another element there is water demand, and the demand for water is driven by a growing population and rising wealth. What you see here on the slide, a big red rectangle there, is the shortage which is predicted between the anticipated demand of water and the available supply. The Water Resource Group investigated that, and their conclusion was harsh. 60% of that gap can only be countered investing in new technologies, new solutions. Our current legacy systems are insufficient to counter that water distress. And go to the next slide, please. And this is really at the heart of what we are doing with Pure Terra. And what you see here on the slide is not an innovative way of communicating between two people on different places on the globe. What we see here is not a dated picture. What we see here is a current way to identify leakages underground. And just to put it in a framework, after treating water, we lose 20 to 30% of our water, distributing it to industries and households. And that is such an incredible waste. And the way we try to counter this is by using those listening sticks to understand really where leakages happen underground. That is dated. What we at Pure Terra aim for is to identify and invest in those technologies that radically change the way that we use, treat, and value water. This is an example of a listening stick. Technologies we invest in are technologies that use sensors and artificial intelligence to identify leakages more efficiently. What we are interested in is different ways of filtering water. Nanofiltration to enable industries to reuse their processed water, or at least treat the water well before they give it back to the environment. What we are interested in is intelligent irrigation to help farmers to reduce the use of pesticides, to reduce water and to increase yield. What we are interested in is real-time monitoring of water quality and the process of treating water. What we are interested in is technologies that use a different way, different membranes to filter water, to decrease energy consumption with 50 to 70%. Next slide, please. So water has only one SDG, that's SDG 6, and that's all about access to water and sanitation. But frankly, if you understand how water is related to all the SDGs, it's not a surprise that the UN warned us that if we don't solve water, we don't achieve the SDGs. And on this picture here, I colored blue all the SDGs that in our view have a relation with water. Take, for example, gender equality. If we can free up the time that people, that particularly women and young girls, use to get water from their wells for their households, it's incredible what we can achieve there. The waterequity.org from Gary White and Matt Damon is doing good work there. If you understand that water uses up to 5% of global energy to explore, to transport, and to treat. And if you understand that the energy sector uses up to 8% of the global freshwater resources to produce energy, you start to understand how those are related. In the EU Green Deal, the 6 environmental objectives, one has the word water in it, but all 6 are related to water. Next slide, please. The industry is changing, and what we recognize is that there is no lack of regulation. Regulation leads to change. There is no shortage of new, radically different technologies. We have screened thousands of technologies and pre-listed over 200 of the most promising technologies. And there's no shortage of engagement and investment by corporates. The CDP recently estimated again that the cost of inaction is five times larger. The losses of water risk is 5 times larger than currently investing in solving those issues. Corporates are investing, but what we lacked really was the financial markets to address this problem. And we're very grateful and proud as well that together with a group of private investors and the European Investment Fund, we've really addressed to the markets how water is not only an environmental issue, but it is also an investment opportunity. Next slide, please. Our investment thesis is really based on 3 pillars. We are experienced entrepreneurs, we are experts in water, and we are investors. And with that, we focus on 4 elements in water. That is water quality, water treatment, efficient use, and circularity of water and everything that's in there. Next slide, please. I'd like to close off with the fact that we have experienced in practice the support of the European Investment Fund, taking the first steps to lead markets towards investing in water. With the European Investment Fund, we've raised 60 million, and we are confident that we will raise another 40 million from the market in the early of next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to you that you stressed all these facts. Indeed, we all, the consumers, businesses, we need to treat water well before putting it back into the system, if I can use exactly your words. And also your words came very handy on the ESG 6, access to sanitary water, how it's crucial and how it's interlinked with all the ESGs. And also, indeed, as your jobs just said, the European Green Deal has indirectly embedded water in all its objectives. I think this is a crucial message. But another crucial message that I got from your presentation is that you're a clear example that water is not just as an essential good, but also an investment opportunity. This is why we are so happy that the InvestEU backs you. And I would like to thank now all our excellent speakers. We have now sometime 6 minutes to answer some of the questions. There were quite a few questions that we received via the slide application, and to go through these questions with different speakers and try to accommodate most of them. I hope we will do so in the remaining 5 minutes. So if I can scroll through some of the questions that we got, I think one of those earlier ones was that perhaps we can go with Paula, you directly. There was one question on the SFDR funds in Article 9. Perhaps you can directly nudge this nut and provide the European Investment Fund answer. Thank you.
Sure. So basically, I think that there was a question regarding the difference of Article 8 and 9. So Article 8 is aiming at pursuing an objective of environment and social characteristics alongside other type of elements, whereas Article 9 type of funds are focused on delivering sustainable objectives mainly. And then, of course, the regulation entails different requirements in terms of the reporting and the indicators that they have to follow. With respect to InvestEU, this is not a mandate requirement to have articles classified as 8 or 9 for the climate and environmental solutions equity product, but it's nice to have because this will evidence that there is a commitment of the fund towards this specific objectives.
Thank you very much, Paula. And now that we have you on this virtual stage, perhaps one more question to you, namely the following one. Do intermediaries, funds, need to be EU-based and or do their sustainable objectives need to focus on the EU? And what about if companies with the aim to expand into the non-EU markets? Is this that you can answer directly to us now? Thank you.
Yeah. So the vehicle needs to be established in the EU, but there is not a specific requirement regarding where's the fund manager located. Regarding the companies, most of them have to be located as well in the EU. But I mean, as we have just a few minutes, maybe if someone else has more questions regarding this, I can take them parallel.
Yes, and in these few minutes that we still have, perhaps it's really useful to repeat what was already said, but there was a question that came, and I'm asking now this question to Merete, namely the support that the InvestEU can provide for green investments is welcome, but are there any advisory and capacity building initiatives that the EU is offering to help the entrepreneurs or those that are following us today?
One of the impediments to get green projects up and running is indeed the lack of advice about how to structure and get the financing that is needed. And therefore, already in the predecessor to InvestEU, we had an advisory pillar run by the European Investment Bank. I think I mentioned already, we call it the advisory hub. And entrepreneurs can apply to the hub via the EIB to get a tailor-made advisory package. So the whole organization of the EIB is behind, and the hub can call on financial and technical expertise from across the bank to help the client get the project on track. Because sometimes it's really just a little push that is needed. And I would also mention that under the European Enterprise Network, there are sustainability advisors. This is more for the SMEs or for the smaller projects. And these sustainability advisors are there to help the SMEs, and they're actually free of charge. So this is also an offer that is out there and that will help the smaller companies in particular with their green projects.
Thank you, Merete. We also have a question that came to Elena, namely a question whether you in the bank, in Intesa Sanpaolo, whether you're taking part in any PES schemes within the MBS space. So Elena, if you can touch this question, thank you.
Well, let's say that we have a specific, let's say, department to deal with agribusiness. We are working also there on sustainability issues and on nature-based solutions. So let's say that we are still in the working phase there, but yes, we will tackle that. Of course, let's say that first of all, probably we focus more our attention on climate, and particularly in the first two objectives of the European taxonomy, and now also following, let's say, the pressure coming from the ECB on these, and now we are moving more on the other four objectives, and particularly on other environmental issues.
Thank you, Elena. We also got two questions that are addressed to Job, specifically on water. Perhaps we tackle the first one, namely, Job, if you can help me on water. Perhaps people with land can apply for funding to install walls to capture rainwater and recycling systems. Perhaps individuals should be empowered to go off-grid. What's your view, Job, on this question?
Yeah, that's a very good thought. One of the essential elements in solving the water crisis is to make this circular system, which it effectively is. I mean, we use the water the dinosaurs used, and many generations after us will still use. It's a circular system, but we need to reduce that into smaller circular systems. We need to decentralize water use, and that stormwater management is one of the elements there, as reuse of water in industries is. That's a very important element.
Thank you, Job. There was also one question, how we can create an ecosystem of water entrepreneurs. I suggest that who asked this question that follows up discussion with you directly via the platform that COP27 is enabling us, because the water entrepreneurs, that can be a really vast reply that I'm sure Jeb could provide. And as we have only a few seconds left, there was one question on nuclear. I guess the question was on the Commission stance on the nuclear. As you might know, in July, this was very much highly on the agenda. And if I can quickly answer on this, and to stress that climate neutrality is the objective and the legal obligation that the Commission also has. And we committed to use all available tools to move away from high carbon emitting energy sources. However, Russia's unprovoked military aggression to Ukraine adds to the urgency to accelerate our green transition. This is what we explained today. And we also said the REPowerEU plan is, and the complementary delegated acts on gas and nuclear both reflect this reality and help reduce our dependency on Russian gas. This is why gas and nuclear have been added in the taxonomy as transitional activities and with a limited number of circumstances and under very strict conditions. I hope this answers the question. I would like now to thank all the speakers. I think it was very good, everything that you presented, and I very much thank all the participants that asked so many questions. Unfortunately, we don't have any time left to answer, but there is the platform, the COP27 platform, that enables you to approach directly the speakers and ask further questions or to elaborate on the questions that you ask on Slido. And if you're interested to watch this session again, do so. You will be able to do so via the event link exactly on this streaming platform that you're watching us once the session has concluded. And the same is also with the presentation. You will have access to them. So warm thank you again to all the speakers and all the online participants for this event that we had today. Thank you for watching us.